Learning about the Transatlantic Slave Trade with Rebecca Lloyd, 8XL1. Hi, it's Rebecca, and today I'm going to be telling you all about the Transatlantic Slave Trade. What we need to clarify first before we begin is what a slave actually is. Well, a slave is someone who is owned by another person and works for nothing. Slaves normally do labour-intensive jobs or domestic work. And now we know that, we can learn all about the Transatlantic Slave Trade. The Transatlantic Slave Trade was the transportation of 10 to 12 million slaves from Africa to countries like the Caribbean, America and Brazil. It happened between the 16th and 19th century and helped many economies across the world. Although a majority of slaves went to the Caribbean, the UK economy benefited massively. For example, the Liverpool banks made £1 million a year in profits from the slave trade. The slaves were needed to harvest new crops such as sugarcane, tobacco and cotton for newfound colonies. The native workers refused, and many of them became ill, so they turned to Africa. And many people wonder why all of the slaves were from Africa. Back in the 16th century, Europeans saw Africans as uncivilized and savage. They thought this because there was no physical evidence of art, community, government or religion, only oral. The Europeans traded with African kings to get the workers. They gave them manufactured goods, rum and weapons in return for slaves, and the African kings had no reason to say no. Once the slaves had been captured, they were shackled to ship walls and all crammed together in a small space under deck. What makes this worse is that babies were crammed under deck too. They were held by their mothers, and many of them died because they had no space to breathe. What little food they did get was thrown in their hands like it was dirt. They got 2 meals a day, and the majority of it was a sort of porridge mess. Men and women were kept in separate parts of the ship, and some of them were even crammed on shelves like they were objects. Whilst on board, some slaves who had maybe made a mistake or stepped out of line were tortured and beaten by the captain of the ship. They did this in front of the other slaves so that would teach them not to make the same mistake and to stay, right. The slaves had to suffer these barbaric conditions for around 7 weeks, but many decided to end their misery and starve themselves. Many other risks on board were dehydration and diseases. Because they were all crammed in a small space, disease could spread quickly and many of them could die. They believed that when they died, their souls would travel back to Africa in the afterlife. Back then, people believed that slavery was right and that Africans were born to be slaves. This is because they had a different colour skin to Europeans. Many people agreed with the slave trade, however, some brave people disagreed. The Abolitionist was a magazine that was sold during the slave trade, showing the dangers and bad conditions on board the ships. This made some people realise that slavery was wrong and truly not healthy, and it was finally abolished in the 1860s. Many people believe that the transatlantic slave trade was the start of racism and discrimination, and after all this suffering, their descendants live in a world where slavery is frowned upon and everyone has the right to be free. Now this is known as the trade triangle. As you can see, guns, rum and manufactured goods come from the UK to Africa. Slaves go from Africa to South America, and sugar and tobacco go from South America to the UK. Now I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. Thanks for watching. Bye!